Welcome back to Coachology in 20, where we learn coaching concepts in 20 minutes. If you're tuned in, please say hi. Let me know you're here. Let me know where you're tuning in from. Feel free to be part of this session. If you're a new coach, get your notepad ready, get your tablet ready, get ready to take some notes. If you're an experienced coach, get your fingertips ready and start to share your wisdom, your experience over your time as a coach. I'm going to invite in some wisdom from you through a series of questions through today's topic. So what are we going to be looking at today? So we are going to be covering in the next 20 minutes attributes of an impactful coach. And the first question that I want to ask you is, what do you think? In a previous session, we covered the 8 key skills of a coach. What do you think is the difference, or how would you define the difference between a skill and an attribute? Let me know in the comments box. What's the difference between a skill and an attribute? It's very important for us to make this distinguishment before we continue with today's topic. I can see Adele's tuned in. Adele, thank you so much for being here. Wonderful to see you here. I can see Chantel Hamilton's tuned in from London. Chantel, great to see you here. Thank you so much for being here. And please feel free to share your wisdom in this space. We're going to use the wisdom of everybody to give people benefit and to learn and to understand coaching at a deeper level. This Coachology in 20 is part of our mission to make coaching affordable and accessible across the globe. So what is the difference between a skill and an attribute? Now, whilst you're typing your answers, I'm going to give it to you in the form of a nutshell. A skill is something we do. We can learn, we can practice, we can master this skill. This is the listening, this is the questioning. An attribute is how we behave. And it becomes a little bit more difficult for us to change how we behave. So a skill is something we do. An attribute is how we behave. And in today's session, we've got 20 minutes to go through 5 key attributes of an impactful coach. So the next question I have for you is, what do you think are the key attributes of a coach? What would you say were your top 3 attributes if you're a coach that's tuned in? You see we've got Darnusha tuned in. Welcome, Darnusha. It's wonderful to see you here. Thank you so much for tuning in today. What do you think are the 3 key aspects of a coach? Let me know. Then I'm going to walk you through 5. I'd love to know in the comments box, what do you think are the 3 key attributes, your 3 key attributes as a coach? I can see we've got a spike of people tuned in. We've just talked about the difference between a skill and an attribute. How a skill is something we do, an attribute is how we behave as a coach. And what you're going to feel, what you're going to see as I go through the 5 core attributes of an impactful coach today is the big difference between a non-impactful coach and an impactful coach is that an impactful coach is more active than passive. So Donusha is saying being truthful to the staff. So definitely that openness, that transparency is very important as a coach, especially if we're talking about team and group coaching and working within our teams. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. Any other thoughts? What are the key attributes? And while you start to bring that in, I'm going to introduce some of the attributes of an impactful coach here. And again, as I mentioned, you're going to see the difference, the key difference between all these attributes is that an impactful coach is more active in their coaching sessions, where a non-impactful coach is going to be more passive. So the first key attribute of a successful or impactful coach is the ability to encourage and to challenge. It's great to be there to motivate, to inspire, to encourage our clients towards their success, to achieve their goals, to overcome their problems, to overcome their challenges. But we can't be passive about this. We've got to find that balance between encouraging them and challenge them. So for example, if you've got a client that's coming, that's been there for maybe you've been coaching them for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and they have the same actions. They commit to doing the same things time and time again, but they never complete it. They never make progress. They never come to the session and tell you that I've done this, this, and this, and I'm making progress towards my goal. A non-impactful coach will just sit back, passively acknowledge that, and continue to start to ask the conversations and start to see what else they can do to work towards their goal. An impactful coach will know how to challenge that, but challenge that in a professional manner, where we're not accusing them and saying, why haven't you done this? What's holding you back? We come in a professional way. We observe, we call out what we see. We say, I've noticed we've been coaching, having these coaching conversations for the past 4 to 5 weeks. And we've had these actions on our action plan for a long time now. Shall we take some minutes just to sit down and look at what's really holding you back? What's stopping you from completing these actions between session and session? So one of the key attributes is the ability to find that balance between encouraging and challenging our clients. And if you're a coach that struggles to challenge, I've got 3 tips that you can start to apply to challenge your clients. The first is ask for permission to challenge. So if you feel uncomfortable challenging a client for not hitting their goals, for not completing their action plans, ask them for permission. I've noticed that there's something you shared there, and I would like to challenge you. Could I have permission to challenge you right now? That doesn't break the rapport, it's not aggressive, and it's inviting the client to allow you to challenge. From there, you can ask the client on how strong they want that challenge. On a scale of 1 to 10, how strong can I challenge you right now? Do they need somebody to challenge them quite harsh? Do they need somebody to be a bit soft in their approach when they're challenging them? Again, we're putting the choice to the client. And the third tip is actually moving the client into a hypothetical situation where they can challenge themselves. And what I mean by this is you can say, right, if this same problem or challenge was happening to a friend, what would you say to that individual? How would you challenge your friend if he was delivering the same deliverables as you, if he's working towards the same goal and not completing the same actions? So that's 3 tips we can use when we're challenging. I'm going to come back to the comments to see if we've got anything in here. So Adele is saying, challenge them in a healthy manner. Yep, exactly what I've just been talking about there, the ability to encourage and challenge. So we need to challenge in a professional way. And also demonstrates client care, 100%. So we need, when we do challenge our clients, we need to do it in a way that honors and respects the coaching relationship, the rapport that we have with our clients, and in a way that demonstrates client care. Thank you so much for sharing that, Adele. So again, you can see the difference here is a non-impactful coach will be quite passive and not challenge, or maybe have a bit of fear of challenging a client. An impactful coach will know how to challenge, will be able to observe what's holding them back and ask questions around that. The next key attribute is the ability to remain impartial and objective. A non-impactful coach will fall into the trap of giving advice, will fall into the trap to giving opinions, thoughts, personal experiences. As a coach, we don't do this as a professional coach, as an impactful coach. We don't give advice. We don't insert our opinions, our biases, or our assumptions into that space. And one of the traps you'll see coaches move from is from a place of giving advice into a space of actually asking leading questions. So I was to give you an easy example of how a non-impactful coach might approach a scenario or a session with a client. A non-impactful coach, let's say our client wants to get fitter, they want to get more healthier, but they just can't get themselves to the gym. They cannot commit to going to the gym 3, 4, 5 times a week every day. They cannot commit to that action. Now, a really unqualified coach will jump in, give them advice, tell them what they need to do, tell them how many times they need to go to the gym, what workouts they need to do. That's a non-impactful coach. A coach that's in training, that's starting to learn, might then lead into what's known as leading questions. So they might ask a series of closed questions like, have you tried running? Have you tried working out outside? Have you tried HIIT? Have you tried jogging at a different time in the day? They'll ask a series of closed questions. An impactful coach that's staying impartial and objective in this scenario will ask them questions like, what physical exercises do you really enjoy? Which physical exercises that you've done in the past have really worked for you and have been quite helpful and simple for you to do? What physical exercises could you commit to that's realistic for you to commit to? Have you noticed these are open questions that are remaining impartial and objective? I'm not telling the client what workouts they need to do, how frequently they need to do it. I'm asking them questions, curious questions, to understand what it is that excites them, to help them come to their own answers. So the second important attribute of an impactful coach is the ability to remain impartial and objective. I'm just going back to the slides, on to the next one. The third attribute is the ability to clarify. In non-impactful coaches, there's a lot of things that might be holding us back from being able to clarify our context with our clients. Maybe we're a bit fearful that we might look a bit daft or a bit incompetent if we didn't fully understand the information that the client is sharing with us. We need to get past our ego, and we need to be able to fully understand what is going on for the clients. Maybe we just ask vague questions. We just accept vague goals. For example, using the fitness goal again here, because it's something we can all relate to. Just having a goal that we want to get fitter doesn't really mean nothing. It's very vague. But a non-impactful coach will work with that. Excellent. You've got a goal that you want to get fitter. Let's start the work and proceed from there. Where an impactful coach will get down into the details and they will clarify what is being shared. So what does it mean to be fitter? What does that look like for you? What do you need to do in order for you to get fitter? How do we make this goal smart? So a good tool that an impactful coach would use at this point, if we've got an unclear goal, is what's known as SMART objectives, or the SMART framework. And that looks at how do we make the goal specific? How do we make it measurable? How do we make it attainable? How do we make it realistic? And how do we make it time bound? And we go through that to really clarify where our client is at, where they want to be, and what their goal is. We're active on our clarification. We want the details. We want to fully understand. A non-impactful coach will just accept vague questions, vague context, and vague goals. So it's about shifting to be able to clarify, asking clarity questions. So I can see Adele has put in here, asking clarity questions and build a background 100%. So another little tip here is that clarity questions are the only closed questions that we should be using in coaching. And it should sound something like, just to clarify what you've shared there, just to make sure that I understand, you've said this. So the client can respond yes or no. For those of you who don't understand closed open questions, are different questions in coaching. We're going to cover that later on in a different session on Coachology. But for the purpose of today, a closed question is a question that results in a yes or no answer. An open question is something that allows a different response of more detail. And the only time we can ask closed questions as a coach is through clarity questioning. So that's the third attribute of an impactful coach. The fourth is resourceful accountability. Now, as a coach, we are an accountability function for our clients. But what I've put here is resourceful accountability, because there's a difference between saying that we'll check in with our clients and actually being a resourceful accountability function. So how do we become more resourceful as a coach? Instead of just checking in to see whether they've done their actions once or twice a week or following up with the commitments that we say. Well, first of all, we need to own a suite of different tools, models, frameworks that we can introduce into our coaching sessions that are going to help the client move forward and help hold them accountable. So the more we learn, the more we grow, the more we develop as a coach, the more we fully understand models, tools, and frameworks and understand when they are relevant within our coaching sessions, the more resourceful we become as accountability function. So resourceful accountability is very important if we want to become an impactful coach. The other important point when it comes to resourceful accountability, stepping away from just checking in with our clients, we need to be able to ask those questions around accountability. And what I mean by this is when we're in our coaching sessions, we can ask our clients, okay, what resources, what tools, who can help support you right now in terms of achieving this goal? We explore other methods of accountability tools that client might have through these questions. We also ask questions around what might stop them. So if you're going to go ahead and commit to this action within the next week, what might stop you? What might get in the way? What might derail you? What might take you off track? How are we going to manage this if this happens this week? So as an impactful coach, we step away from just passively checking in with our clients to a place where we become really resourceful as an accountability function for our clients. That's the fourth important attribute of an impactful coach. And finally, The last important attribute is that we provide value in our coaching sessions and our clients feel supported. We don't want to isolate our clients. We want to make them feel supported. We want to have the ability as an impactful coach to adapt our coaching approach for different sessions. So for example, as a coach, we can be very focused on goals, progress. Tell me what you've done since our last session. Tell me how you can move forward. We can be really very goal orientated. And sometimes a client might have had an awful day. Something might have happened in their personal lives. Something really deep might have happened. They might be feeling a little bit depressed, a bit sad. And they come into our session. And the last thing we want to do as a coach to damage that rapport is to tell them, right, okay, what have you done between now and last week? Why haven't you done this? We need to change and change our approach to a softer approach to allow our client to feel more supportive. So we can ask those. It really comes from the importance of how we open up our coaching sessions. We don't just jump straight into last week's notes. We ask them how the day goes. We come up with a nice icebreaker. We create that presence in that safe psychological space for our clients before we get straight into what we covered in our last session. This will allow any external noise to come into play, understand what's happened for the client that day, how they've been feeling, and then we can judge whether or not we need to change our approach to something like emergent style coaching, which again we'll talk about later on down the line in Coachology in 20. But this is where we take a step back from goals and we focus on being present and we really listen to the client. Remember, the agenda of our coaching sessions needs to always be set by the client. We don't set these agendas. So the fifth and final attribute, important attribute of an impactful coach is that we provide value and we provide support. And there's one final point I want to make on the value perspective here is our coachees, our clients need to walk away from our sessions feeling like they've got some form of self-discovery, self-awareness, actions to take forward. They need to feel like they've got value from our session. We can't just sit there and talk to them passively and just have a conversation that's going nowhere. We need to also, as a coach, be able to identify and ask questions around and understand the value that our clients are receiving. So a little tip that I've got for this final attribute here is at the end of every coaching session, ask them what their key point or key takeaway that they're going to take from our coaching session, or some kind of question that's linked to asking about the value that they've got from that session. This is important feedback from them to reflect on what they're gaining, and also really important feedback for ourselves as a coach to see how we can improve and adjust. So now that we've gone through those 5 attributes, which you can see on the screen, so a quick summary: encouraging and challenging. If we're an impactful coach, we can encourage and challenge and find the balance. We remain impartial and objective. We can clarify the goals, clarify the context. We don't work with vagueness. We become resourceful as an accountability function, and we provide value and support. And this is the moment where I'm going to put a question back to you. I want you to reflect on these 5 attributes. And remember, these are not skills. We talked about the difference between skill and an attribute at the beginning of this session. A skill is something we do, and an attribute is how we behave. So my question is, when you look at these, for the coaches that are tuned in, when you look at these 5 attributes, I want you to work through, after this session, each of these 5, I want you to score yourself out of 10 for each of these 5 attributes. So if you think you've got a good balance between encouraging and challenging, mark yourself high in 9. If you believe you're always impartial and objective, or maybe you're not, maybe you fall into the space of always giving advice, you tend to lead your sessions, score yourself at the lower end of a 2 or a 3. And I want you to score yourself on each of these. You don't have to share this in the comments box. This is a reflective exercise for you. And then what I'd like you to do is take the lowest scoring attribute, and I want you to think of one action you can take away from today's session to improve this attribute. Do you need to be able to challenge your clients more? Do you need to step away from giving advice? Do you need to become more resourceful as a coach? Do you need to clarify the goals a bit more so you can help the clients move forward quicker with their goals? Do you need to provide more value and support? So a bit of a reflective question. We're hitting the 20-minute mark. I can see it's been quite a quiet session, so hopefully you're taking notes and reflecting back on this. But we need, as coaches, if we want to move from being non-impactful, we need to step away from being passive and move into the impactful space of being active within our coaching sessions. That includes being able to be resourceful as an accountability partner, to provide value and support, to encourage and challenge, to clarify what's being shared with us, and also to be able to remain impartial and objective. Those are the 5 key attributes of a coach. I want to thank everybody who's tuned in. I can see we've got lots of people tuned in today, which is absolutely wonderful. We're doing these sessions the same time every Monday, 7 p.m. UK. Coachology in 20. We're going to learn coaching concepts in 20 minutes. But if you can't wait between week and week, you can also grab my book, which is available on Amazon at about £12.97. You can grab the book there by scanning the QR code. Everything we're learning here is in more detail in the Coaching Essentials book. And I just want to leave you with a huge thank you for being here today. Thank you to everybody who has tuned in and joined us today. And thank you for everybody who's engaged. I can see Adele's commenting. I can see Jesse saying thank you. Jesse, wonderful to see you here. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you all the same time next week. Have a wonderful week ahead. I hope it's productive. Take this reflective question and think about what attribute you can improve this week. See you all very soon. Thank you.